Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mendis. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And, it's the weekly Cat Who book. At some point, you'll probably have another gap where I wasn't able to find a Cat Who book. And I actually also have an upcoming vacation, and during that time I plan to record a bunch of videos that have nothing to do with Cat Who or with any of the other stuff I've done so far, so there you go. Once in a blue moon, I can do things that are different. Sort of. Let's pretend. So today's Cat Who book is The Cat Who Saw Stars. And as with many of the Cat Who book titles, this is, again, incidental to the actual mysteries. Because in the course of this book, there are 3 people who die. The first is a hiker who goes missing and turns up literally buried in an enormous dune. The second one is a rich man who has decided to open a restaurant up in Moose County, and in Mooseville in particular, actually. And having opened up that restaurant, Owen Bowen, goodness knows what his parents were thinking, he goes missing while out boating with his wife, who is about half his age, so it is extremely skeevy. And you will not be surprised to find out that we later discover that the two of them got married for reasons other than being so deeply in love. Yes, I'm spelling love there with a W. It's a W-U-V, love. Anyway, so the wife, Ernestine, also dies at the end when a massive sinkhole opens up behind the restaurant. Owen Bowen is the money behind the restaurant, whereas Ernestine, Ernie for short, is the driving force and the chef who just always wanted to be a chef, and she married Owen in the hopes that his money would get her a restaurant. And by the end of the book, we find that she actually stabbed her husband through the head with a potato skewer thing that they had used at the restaurant to sort of skewer potatoes and show off fancy potato roasting techniques. You know how restaurants do fancy things like, Bananas Foster, where they set stuff on fire at the table? The idea in this book is apparently that the potato skewers are a similar sort of thing that involves excitement and oil and dramatic gestures and potatoes. So, there you go. Who knew potatoes can be exciting or dramatic? Although I'm going to state, for the record, not as exciting and dramatic as Hank the Cave Peanut. I am a very big fan of Hank the Cave Peanut, and I remain deeply disappointed that Hank the Cave Peanut is not immediately accessible to anybody. If you find Hank the Cave Peanut, it is a great film short, involving a peanut who goes hunting the wild fork, and you should absolutely watch it because it is one of my favorite short films ever. Which has nothing to do with this book, but I was, I felt like I had to sing the praises of Hank the Cave Peanut. So, Cat Who Saw Stars, why is that the title? That's because the entirety of this book, Quillerin is listening to everybody talk to him about the aliens that come to visit, because apparently everybody in Moose County, except for his old friend Arch Riker, believes in aliens. One of the, let's see, that there's a bunch of people who have stories about that time they saw an alien spaceship, and several people around and about watch for aliens overnight and at nights, and because the Comptons purchased a telescope for the purposes of watching for aliens. And Quill basically he just doesn't believe it. I mean, he believes his mustache is psychic, but but he doesn't believe that, there are aliens. So, there's a degree of I suppose hypocrisy in Quill's beliefs about the supernatural and the paranormal. But he's one of those people who's nice enough about it to those who do believe, in that, when they say, "Ooh, the aliens are coming," he goes, "That's nice. What's for lunch?" Elizabeth Hart, who, all one of you, if anyone who is watching this, may remember, is the young lady whose proper name is Applehart, who Quill saved back on Pear Grand Breakfast, Providence Island, several books back. The young lady who is dating Derek Cuddlebrink, the 6-foot-something erstwhile actor who occasionally comes across as not that bright, although Quillerin seems to think he is, and who is occasionally Quillerin's sidekick. So Elizabeth and Derek are dating, and so she tends to play a certain role in these books by virtue of the fact that Quill keeps on, pumping Derek for information, asking Derek to sort of sneak around on his behalf and ask people questions and help him investigate murders. She's deciding to open up a lending library about aliens. And one of the big themes in this book is Quill missing Polly. Because as Quill and Polly's relationship has continued on, he's become he's become very much a one-woman man. And he is really quite devoted to her. It comes up again and again, not least of which because he's willing to muzzle his instincts to talk to her about certain things because it upsets her. The thing is that it's one of those exercises in forbearance that makes a relationship work. Of course, one of the other ongoing themes in this series that comes up again and again is the, "Quill, why aren't you and Polly getting married yet?" But throughout this whole book, we come back again and again and again to Quill's skepticism about aliens while he believes that his cat is psychic, and his skepticism that there are visitors from outer space even though his mustache is psychic. We all have our things. So at the very end of the book, Quillerin has a nightmare of sorts. A nightmare in which he finds himself waking up afterwards thinking that it was only a dream, but it was a terrifying dream about being visited by aliens, implying that Coco is an alien, and he wakes up and, says, "Oh, it was all a dream, but why am I covered in sand?" Which goes along very well with the Cat Who series as a whole. Quill is a skeptic, but he's not. He's doesn't believe in ghosts and things, but he's willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I do wonder sometimes how much this reflected Lillian Jackson Braun. If it's that she genuinely believed in the supernatural or the paranormal, or if she believed only as much as Quill did, or if this is just, something entertaining she'd written into her book. As a side note, this book was published back in 1999, and the reason I bring this up is only because as time has passed, it becomes more and more clear that even though the first book in this series was published in the 60s, and Quillerin in that book is supposedly a World War II vet, by this book, Quill has only been in Pickaxe for a limited number of years. He's only left behind his work as a professional journalist in major big city newspapers for a limited number of years. But somehow it hasn't been the length of time between 1967 and 1999 that would mean that these books were keeping pace properly with what year it is in the outside world, or rather, what year it is in the outside world, or keeping an internal consistency with how long Quill had been doing things from the approximate year of publication of the first book. And of course, the big reason we know this is because by this point in this book, we have our first mention in the series of emails, which those of you who are somewhat older might remember. Email didn't become a really, really big thing until after the turn of the millennium. Up until the year 2000, not everybody had an email of their own. You would have the family email. You would have the family computer. But for the first time, this book mentions email. And if it had been only 6-7 years since Quill had left whatever large city it was that he was in, if it had only been 6 or 7 years, we would still be somewhere in the 1970s, which was before the advent of email. At least I think it was. I think 70s was when email was, like, properly invented. I don't know. I never paid that much attention to the history of computers. Never really much interested me. I am unfortunately one of those cat video kind of people who doesn't really pay attention to how computers work as long as my YouTube is running. Of course, I haven't mentioned, but I might as well mention, Quill moves in this because, again, the theme, Quill goes somewhere, things happen, meets new people. And he does meet a bunch of new people. He meets Weatherby Good's cousin, who is a corvidologist. For those who don't know, corvidologists study crows. And she winds up taking over his house for a while until Quill gets a panicked phone call from Weatherby, who says, "Where is she? She was supposed to be here today for the family reunion." At which point she takes off running, going, "Oh my god, I forgot." There is, of course, a lot of food in this book, because there is always a lot of food in these books. Obviously, one of the central themes in this is the restaurant that Derek Cuddlebrink is working at, the restaurant that was owned by the disappeared Owen Bowen, that it was worked in, that the head chef of that restaurant was Owen's wife, who, as I said, we find out at the end of the book that she stabbed Owen through the head with one of those potato skewers. I'm not entirely certain if she was supposed to have done that to stop him from committing the felony of starting up a drug ring up north, or if it was just that she wanted the restaurant, or if it was that she violently hated him, but whatever the reason, she stabbed her husband through the head with that. And the other theme, which you may notice there is over here, the ball of yarn, is knitting. Arch Riker gets blackmailed into knitting in public. Quill winds up purchasing a lot of knitted items. And one of the key people who helps resolve the mystery is a professional knitter. And I think I've really said all the things that I'm going to say. So, thanks for coming, and I will see you all next week.